Okay, so I was recently asked to show how I paint my water for the Dreadfleet ships. And so this is just going to be a very straightforward tutorial on something that I kind of thought was fairly easy, but I've actually had several requests for information about this. So, what we have here is the Bloody Reaver water base. Unfortunately, this kind of has the least amount of water, but it's the only one I have left that isn't completed yet, or at least isn't completed, and the base is all on its own. But anyway, it has been primed black, and as you can see, I actually masked off this area when I was priming it so that the glue would adhere when it came time to glue the ship down. Anyway. So, primed black, and now I'm going to paint the whole thing with Necron Abyss, which I have prepared earlier. I like Necron Abyss because it's a good color, and it's an incredibly dark blue without being black. And the White Dwarf article on painting the ships recommends actually starting with black as the base and dry brushing over that. And I actually did that with a couple of ships, and I didn't really... It's nice. I mean, there's certainly variations on this theme that you can do, but I like the richer colors of having the dark blue base instead of the black base. So that's what I'm going to do here. Obviously, this step doesn't have to be pretty. You just need to get a nice smooth covering. And luckily with the foundation paints that's pretty easy. So I am just going to get that all covered. Okay, so step one is done. I need to let that dry, and then I will come back. Okay, so now that that's dry, I'm going to do my first dry brush step. Just real quick though, in order to speed up the drying process, I actually use a hair dryer that I stole out of the bathroom. So I will... when I want to get through this stuff quickly and I have a big area like this that is waiting to dry, I will force it to. So if you're ever in that situation, you want your model to dry faster, use a hair dryer, but these are plastic models, so be careful not to get it too hot because they'll warp. Anyway, so that's dry, it's ready to go. I now have my first step color mixed, and this is essentially a mix of 2 parts Necron Abyss to 1 part Enchanted Blue, or in this case, Magic Blue from Vallejo. Doesn't matter, really. Either one will work. I just use whatever I have on hand. So it's going to be a dry brush, and as with any dry brush, you want it to be relatively dry. But this is, being the first coat, I actually want a lot of it on there. So I'm not going to make it as dry as I might on my later coats. So I like to use a flat brush when I have a lot of space to cover. And nylon brushes, I have found, work best for dry brushing. Most of the brushes I see listed for dry brushes from Games Workshop and from P3 don't seem particularly well suited to the task. A nice, cheap nylon brush from your local art store is probably the best thing in the world. You can usually get them in packs of many for relatively cheap, essentially like $1 a brush. Okay, so as with any dry brush, I'm kind of going against the grain of the detail so that it'll pick up that detail and not fill in the dark recesses. You know, always making sure to keep the brush relatively parallel with the surface. I don't want to go poking it down in there. Again, the whole point of this, if you've never done a dry brush, or if you've always wondered like really what's the point, or how do I make my dry brushing better, it's always about picking up surface detail and leaving the recesses alone. You can probably only barely tell what's going on as I look at the monitor. Yeah, I'm not seeing too much of a change, but that's okay. It's happening, and it's good. To do a dry brush correctly, you really need to keep it subtle. If you try and do too much at one time, it's just going to look bad. I think dry brushing has gotten a bad rap in recent years because a lot of people use it as a way of essentially speed painting instead of, just one of the tools in their toolbox. And so excessively dry brushed figures are kind of synonymous with badly painted figures. And so that's it's made people avoid it. It's a good technique in the right applications, and this is one of those. Okay, so the first highlight is done, and essentially at this point all I'm going to do is add some more lighter blue to my dry brush color. Right, just going to mix that right in there and get that to be significantly lighter. By the way, I don't usually clean the brush with a paper towel like this. I usually just do it right on a flat piece of paper or on my bench or something. This is just for illustrative purposes. It's for your benefit. Alright, so the next highlight is going to be, we're going to be a lot more careful about it, and the point here is really just the highest, not even the highest, but the higher high points than before. So I'm hardly putting any pressure on the brush, hardly pushing down at all. I'm letting the brush do the work. Now see how quickly that went? Because I'm not trying to do as much as I did last time. Okay, next step, I'm going to use the Enchanted Blue on its own. And now, as far as the color choices and how light you go with this, that's really up to you. The way I like to look at it is the choppier the water, the lighter you're going to go. You probably should not use pure white, even if you're doing what are essentially white caps. On the ones that of my ships that look like they're white, here, let me show you one. Please focus. There we go. Alright, so even there at the prow, that's not white. That is extremely light blue. You don't need pure white to make it sort of have the appearance of white without having the drawbacks of having it just be too much contrast. So now I'm taking my new brighter blue color. This is pure Enchanted Blue, and really just hitting these highest portions here, not so much in the recesses, but maybe a little bit, and especially where the ship is cutting through the water, there's going to be some catch light back around the sides. Now I need some white. This is Joe Sonia. It's called Artist Gouache, but it's really just a heavily pigmented craft paint. I like it a lot. Anyway, so I'm going to take some of that, mix some of this. You know, and just like any other painting you're doing, it's you know, building up layers. And the more steps that you give to your color, the more subtle the effect. And in this case, I'm going to want to make sure that I get a lot of that paint off of there. You also notice I'm not cleaning my brush between colors, and that's because it'll continue to sort of add some of the old color into the dry brush that I'm doing next. So now in this case, I'm really carefully just dry brushing on the highest points. So here, 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 maybe there, a little bit here where you can see it sort of lapping up over. Right, not the whole thing. You don't do the whole thing with every color pass. This is essentially the areas that are going to be catching the most light. Remember that water is very reflective, and so what we're trying to simulate here is the light reflecting off the water. Now when you go to the really, you know, the really light, almost white colors, that's you're trying to simulate foam. And I will do a little bit of that on this, but I don't really see this particular base as lending itself to too much super light color. Usually if I want to test my dry brush to see if, you know, like I have most of the paint off, I'll use my thumb. It's a good way to see how much pigment is still coming off. A little bit too much still. Okay, I am done with that brush. And let me show you the final, if I'm going to do a final highlight on the white caps, you know, if I have something that I really want to do it, and I will go ahead and do it on the front portion of this, even though I'm not really feeling it for this piece, but for the purposes of illustration, I will do it anyway. So I'm going to mix up some really light blue here, nearly white. Put on my magnifier for this. Make sure I have a good point, make sure the color is nice and fluid. Go in, not too much. All right, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to just touch touch the areas that I want to have that white cap look. And this doesn't have to, in fact, I was going to say, it doesn't have to be a perfect line. In fact, you don't want it to be a line at all. I'm actually kind of dabbing at this because it's foam, right? It's not a hard line. So you don't want it to be a hard line. So I'm dabbing on it and making it very broken, very irregular. I gotta tell you, trying to see around this camera is harder than it may seem. The paint's drying out. Ooh, that's a little bright. Maybe a little bit more blue. Alright, and there she is. Kind of see the color differences there. Maybe if I get rid of this. Come on, there we go. So there it is, and it's not bad. It's not bad. And again, you can add more of the white, or almost white, near white, super light blue, as you like. You can also do, gradations of color within that, and the more you do, the cooler it's going to look. I think I will go back and touch this a little bit more with some lighter colors back here. I think it could use it. And I like the contrast. So, but that's it for now, and that's it. I mean, it's really simple. It's all about nice, controlled, subtle use of dry brushing, and then some applied highlights where it needs it in a very controlled manner. And I think you can do it. You should give it a try. And that's it for now. I got to get back to work on the rest of these ships because we're getting close. And want to get it done. So I'll talk to you later.